Malolele, aloha, glad you could join us for the season finale of Pacific Way. Small island nations have always been vulnerable to the impacts of extreme weather. But with increased frequency and intensity in recent years, extreme weather events have crippled development efforts in many small island nations around the world. This video by the World Meteorological Organization demonstrates how strengthening early warning systems and networks can not only minimize the economic impact of extreme weather events, but ultimately save lives. A new storm is building.
Discovery Houston, recommend vector transfer to the BFS.
As it feeds off the surface temperature of the ocean, the higher the temperature, the more severe the cyclone will become. Small island nations have always been vulnerable to the impacts of extreme weather. But now climate change is increasing the frequency and intensity of extreme weather events such as tropical cyclones. The increase in extreme weather is already crippling the development of many small island nations around the world. In August 2008, Hurricane Gustav generated the highest wind gusts ever recorded in Cuba. Wind speeds of more than 340 kilometers per hour were recorded before the monitoring equipment was completely destroyed. This hurricane generated waves as tall as 5-story buildings, and it caused some of the worst storm damage ever witnessed in Cuba. When Cyclone Evan hit Samoa in December 2012, this single event resulted in the loss of 1/3 of the country's entire annual economic output. In January 2014, Cyclone Ian devastated Tonga's Ha'apai Islands. This Category 5 cyclone was the strongest storm ever recorded in Tongan waters. In April 2014, intense flooding in the Solomon Islands caused more than 20 deaths and more than 50,000 people were left homeless.
Communities have suddenly lost their loved ones, being robbed away from them by the flood. A minute they will be standing together, and the next minute they've been taken away. And to share that same feeling with the citizens that have been affected in a small country like Solomon Islands is a real disheartening and a stressful feeling to me as Prime Minister of the country.
Many people still die out of extreme events, and we have a duty, it's one of our priorities, to help provide early warnings so that we can save even more lives, and on top of it, that we can minimize the economic impact of that.
Destructions on our infrastructure as well, the bridges, the roads, and that has affected, the economy, the ability of the government to govern. So at that point, you knew that as Prime Minister of the country, you have lost control of, or that the ability to be able to govern has now been really seriously affected.
If we don't do this investment, next time an extreme event comes, it will wipe out years of development effort. And we have seen that over and over again in many developing countries, where you get a tropical cyclone, a hurricane, or a storm surge, whatever, and it's wiping out years of development. So better to invest in prevention, and it costs much less than to put money in rehabilitation and post-disaster action.
But many island nations still lack the basic resources and equipment needed to protect their vulnerable communities from the impacts of our changing climate.
Currently, we only have 5 operational meteorological stations around, and in terms of getting weather observations around, that is not adequate. We do have people that are trained in interpreting weather radar images, that sort of thing. But unfortunately, we don't have that equipment, and I guess it is a priority need, because Solomon Islands, as we know, every year we have flood. And as I said, if we have a weather radar, that would very much improve our early warning system in terms of flooding.
Managing weather data and climatic related information and data is so important for the planning of each country. So these weather donors need to put their support and resources to build this capacity within the country, buy the technology, to be able to access this information more efficiently and effectively, and to have it disseminated to our local communities.
A lot of funding is channeled to climate change, but the science part of the climate change, for example, detection of what are the changes to the climate, you need observations, and in order to have observations, you need to have equipment.
While many small island nations desperately need better forecasting technology, getting the right weather and climate data is only part of the solution. Thousands of kilometers from the Solomon Islands, the small island nation of Cuba is located right in the middle of the Caribbean's Hurricane Alley. Cuba has long been exposed to the threat of extreme weather, but today it has one of the lowest death rates amongst all countries exposed to a high risk of hurricanes. Although Hurricane Gustav destroyed more than 30,000 homes, no lives were lost. Cuba has developed a unique approach for dealing with hurricanes that could provide critical lessons for other small island nations. This poor and politically isolated country has a good network of local weather stations. It also has an advanced warning system that can issue hurricane warnings up to 120 hours before a storm will strike land. The state media is also dedicated to keeping everyone informed of potential dangers. Dr. Jose Rubiera, Cuba's top weather forecaster, has been presenting the weather on national TV since 1991, and the Cuban people have learned to trust Dr. Rubiera when he announces the threat of an approaching hurricane.
Vaya bastante bien porque había seguridad, ¿no? Y gracias al doctor que iba informando frecuentemente de la situación que se encontraba el ciclón. Se fue al acepto, si no aquí hubiera más desgracia.
But Dr. Rubiera says the key to Cuba's success lies in how this information is used to make critical decisions at both the national and community levels.
Decisions are made top to bottom and bottom to top. So everybody is working on the same direction. coordinated. So everybody knows what to do at the national level, at the provincial level, at the municipal level, and even in the neighborhood.
Although Cuba is economically very poor, it has designed a fully integrated approach that makes the very most of its existing resources. Before hurricanes strike, 80% of people who are evacuated from high-risk areas go to stay with families or neighbors who have stronger homes in safer areas. This way, the evacuation shelters are only used by people who need them most. The Cuban government has also made key planning decisions based on lessons from previous hurricane events.
The electricity is cut when the winds get to 90 kilometers per hour. Why? Because at that speed of winds, usually the electricity poles fall down. If those lines are hot, people can get electrocuted by that. So to prevent electrocution, accidental electrocution in that case, electricity is cut.
For Dr. Rubiera, the creation of a truly integrated approach for dealing with hurricanes has only been achieved because of political will.
Political will means not only the forecast office, not only the civil defense, it is not only lessons in the school curricula, it is not only the awareness campaign, it is everything. And it is the action before the storms, when in the storm, and also after the storm.
All these actions are deeply rooted into the Cuba culture. In some of the islands, and sometimes it's not the lack of will to do it, it's just because of the size of the island. You know, Cuba is much bigger than some of the very small islands in the Pacific, which do not have the critical mass to deal with that. So here, the key word is cooperation, that they should not do it alone, but they should do it in cooperation with other similar islands. And this is one of our duties, one of our jobs, to try to encourage, to support this sub-regional or regional cooperation.
A critical issue for all small island nations is how to provide important weather and climate information in a way that will enable both communities and governments to make better decisions. Today, the modeling power of supercomputers combined with more sophisticated observation technology has led to a growing confidence in climate predictions. New climate services can now help governments to make more informed decisions that can help to improve food security and protect public health. In the Pacific, Samoa has led the way by making greater investment in its National Meteorological Service in order to address the increasing impacts of climate change. Countries such as the Solomon Islands are also providing great leadership for other small island nations by using climate data to try and address the increasing risks from malaria and dengue. The challenge now is to ensure that all small island nations have access to the crucial services they need to protect their vulnerable communities from the impacts of extreme weather and the changing climate.
It's not always easy to use by the final user, by the farmers, by the fishermen, and indeed even by governments. So the idea is to transform this information, to package it in a way which can be used by decision makers, from governments to the fishermen. And this is one of the top priorities of the organization, to develop these climate services which can be used by all decision makers.
If we want to protect small island nations from the increasing impacts of extreme weather, then both leaders and donors must make it an urgent priority to invest in stronger weather and climate services. But the global community also needs to do much more than help small island nations to prepare for the inevitable increase in extreme weather. If industrialized countries do not make a stronger commitment to reduce carbon emissions, then the impacts of extreme weather may simply become too great for many of the world's small island nations.
The more we wait, the more difficult it will be, and therefore the more expensive it will be. And if we don't manage that, the more expensive it will be for countries to adapt to climate change. And as you know, small countries, and in particular small island developing states, do not have a huge capacity, a huge financial, technological capacity. So we are going to leave them a situation which is extremely difficult to manage. It's urgent to act, otherwise it will not be manageable.
Welcome back. In early September this year, the independent state of Samoa became the first Pacific Island nation to host a United Nations Small Island Developing States SIDS conference. During this third SIDS conference, a forum on advancing statistical development in SIDS in the post-2015 era was jointly organized by the Partnership in Statistics for Development in the 21st Century, Paris 21, the Samoa Bureau of Statistics, and the Secretariat of the Pacific Community, or SPC. The forum highlighted some of the emerging challenges and strategies to further partnership and cooperation on statistical development in SIDS. Let's take a look.
Taking stock of why statistics matter. A forum on advancing statistical development in small islands developing states, SIDS, in the post-2015 era convened on the opening day of the third United Nations SIDS conference. The side event was organized by Paris 21 in collaboration with the Samoa Bureau of Statistics and the Secretariat of the Pacific Community, SPC.
Without statistics, it's like trying to navigate a boat in the dark, or trying to fly a plane somewhere without any data, without any tools. It's as bad as that. But clearly, we're not in that situation. Things have improved. For example, in 2000, only 3 of the Pacific Island countries were able to provide statistics on hardship and poverty. 10 years later, 14 countries were able to do so.
Held every 10 years, the third SIDS conference was hosted in Apia, Samoa in early September 2014. It provided the first opportunity for data and statistics to be highlighted as important contributors to development at a SIDS conference.
In challenging times, that is the time you need your statistics, because how would you know where you're going, what you need to invest in? For example, in terms of our regional integration, how would you know that more integration is better if we don't have the accurate measurement of the matter?
That's a way that I think we can start encouraging or talking about bringing resourcing to...
Statistics doesn't sit alone, and it's about changing the thinking that bringing statistics more into the mainstream in terms of every time we talk about when we talk about climate change, when we talk about ocean acidification, when we talk about sustainable economic management, when we talk about livelihoods, when we talk about NCDs, absolutely in everything, it has to be come alongside that, needs to set a conversation about statistics, and more specifically, what do we want to do, and then it's always the how are we going to measure that we've done what we want to do.
This forum, titled Advancing Statistical Development in SIDS.
We cannot move our national strategy for development without developing the statistics framework. So that's how important it is, and that's why we give priority to the statistics. because that's where we get our information to allow us to plan the way forward.
Relative isolation, small market size, susceptibility to external market shocks, and environmental threats are just a few of the many challenges affecting the sustainable development of SIDS. Given their unique needs and vulnerabilities, and in line with the conference theme of achieving sustainable development in SIDS through genuine and durable partnerships, the Statistics Forum also provided an ideal platform to discuss emerging challenges with the goal of coming up with strategies to further partnership and cooperation on statistical development in SIDS.
We have 4 countries in the regions. If you use the same analogy, for every $100 spent nationally on the budget for government services, in 4 countries they wouldn't have a monetary unit because it is less than a cent. These are the kind of challenges the countries face.
Money is a problem. Financing of the National Statistical Office and system seems to be by far the greatest challenge. Another challenge is the failure of partners to work together towards a common issue. So several of them come at you, with different things. Why not come on one issue? You don't have to put the funds in a pot and mix it up. You can come with the funds in your pocket, but work together on one.
The SIDS Accelerated Modalities of Action document of the 3rd conference, also known as the Samoa Pathway, has identified statistics as one of the enabling factors to attaining sustainable development. It recognizes the importance of statistics to inform sustainable development policies and evaluate the implementation of internationally agreed sustainable development goals. It also calls for upgrading of SIDS national statistical systems and mainstreaming of sustainable development data collection and analysis.
We need support in terms of accommodating for their demand. And we hope that the international community would certainly come to an understanding and agree that there should be a fund for statistics development in the world, an international fund.
I think with all the new goals that have now come up with in the Samoa pathway, that we're going to need not only more statistics, but better statistics. We're going to have to really look exactly at how we are going to monitor some of these goals and how we are going to achieve them.
Unfortunately, time has caught up with us. Remember, Pacific Way is also online, so do pay us a visit on Facebook, and you can also find our stories on YouTube. This is our last program for the season, and we hope you've enjoyed what we've brought you, and we appreciate all your feedback. From the Pacific Way team at SBC, we wish you and your families a very enjoyable and prosperous festive season and a happy new year in 2015. Until next season, au revoir, tofa soifua, lukimu.